So we're talking today with Tyler VanAuken. Tyler's with Mills Marine. So we're kind of going back to the well here again. We've spoken with Donnie Mills, who's the president and owner of Mills Marine. And your name came referred to us specifically for this episode from a common contact. And as we were talking about before, that's one of the things that really seems to make a difference, a positive influence in the industry is everybody knows somebody. Like it's like 3 degrees of separation.
Yep.
But when you get a good reputation, that really helps open doors, and people. I found that it just opens opportunities because people know you.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, how did you get into the industry?
As you can see, I'm tattooed, so I come from an artsy family.
So, so
working
that's
with my
wearable
hands.
art. Did you do the art yourself?
No, my dad did some of it. He's
Did
a
he
tattoo
really?
artist, yes. No longer, he's retired, but yeah, that's kind of where I come from as far as like my background. I played a lot of sports and stuff growing up, but it was very artsy. And I didn't get into like building things, working with my hands until I was like in middle school, high school. And I've developed this fascination with like how do they build the weightlifting equipment in my house, and started looking at it. Obviously, there's lots of hardware and nuts and bolts, but a lot of stuff is welded, and that's kind of what piqued my interest. I'd be like, it'd be cool to build stuff, but with metal instead of woodworking.
What kind of art did you do originally?
Painting, drawing, all types of art. I'm also a musician, but that's completely separate.
Yeah, but it's all related.
I guess, yeah.
Especially welding.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting here in our shop. I'm not a welder, but I've picked up the tools and done it a couple times. But when I've had that in my hand, I certainly felt like this is as much art and science to be a good welder.
It is. It is. I think having the artistic eye definitely helps, goes a long way. Just kind of seeing the whole picture, keeping everything uniform. Having an artistic background definitely helps with that. I think it definitely came into use in my career.
Certainly the ability to make a weld look good, which isn't everything, but it's a lot.
Lucky enough, my background, once I started in the industry, I started in a production shop with Fairlead as a helper. And when they finally gave me the opportunity to work as a welder and get qualified, I was working as a fabrication and welding technician, so I wasn't just, pigeonholed to just welding, which tends to happen a lot at the shipyards. A lot of our welders at the shipyards don't get a whole lot of fitting or fabrication experience. So early in my career, like my foundation of my welding career, I was learning how to read blueprints and how to fabricate on the fly. So very fortunate in that aspect.
I mean, certainly when somebody looks at something that's been welded, there are times when the appearance of it matters a great deal.
Yes.
Especially if it's a finished product or like a commercial product. People want that to look good. What's under the weld, what's behind that always matters.
Yes.
But you kind of talked about something that I don't think we've really talked about in any of our previous discussions, which is the fabrication side. So there's welding, but there's more to just putting down a long weld on a hull plate on the side of a vessel.
Yes.
That's not the fabrication side. You were doing something different because somebody gave you an opportunity to do this differently.
Yes. Working at Fairlead most of my early career, I actually worked there for 10 years prior to working with Mills Marine. Yeah, I had a lot of opportunities there, and that's why I stayed there as long as I did. I came on as a helper, got the opportunity after working in material control for about a year to get my quals, and once doing so, kind of worked my way up to a lead within that shop. And eventually the opportunity on the production side kind of started to dry up, so I started pursuing some other avenues. The ambition was still there. I didn't want to weld for the rest of my life, as far as day in, day out, 40 hours a week. I did want to progress. I just didn't know exactly where. I didn't know what my career would look like, where exactly I'd end up, if I'd be a supervisor or a foreman. Um, and that was kind of the most logical thing, I think, going through the progression that I went through for those years. But it didn't pan out that way, and I'm not mad about it. That's for sure. Definitely took a left turn, but I've ended up in a pretty good position, and I'm very, very happy with it. That's for sure.
Is that a left turn that you wanted to make? Just saw the opportunity, just hit a cross? What do you mean by you hit that left turn?
An opportunity within our QA department had opened up to become the weld technician. Our weld engineer had recently left. He was the one who was administering all of the weld testing company-wide, which was quite a bit of welders. That weld program is pretty large, as well as all of the new tests, the new hires, and then administering and welding the PQRs to qualify the company and stuff like that. So that's where I really got to get familiar with the QA department. I was already level 2 certified, VT level 2 certified.
VT is
Visual testing.
okay.
It's probably the most common form of NDT. Pretty much anybody that does welding work or maritime work, they have a visual inspection procedure, a visual testing procedure.
And and you've used another acronym in there, NDT, which is non-destructive testing, right?
Non-destructive
So
testing,
you don't
correct.
pull the thing apart, but there's times when that happens.
Yeah, that would be destructive testing. We do a bit of that over at our shop now. I bend test most of our weld plates. Anything that's dissimilar metals, obviously, I have to send out for RT, which is radiographic testing, for those who don't know. Another form of non-destructive testing. And yeah, most of our pipes I send out for RT, but pretty much everything else I bend in-house to save us some money. I'm qualified to do so as long as you're following the guidelines in 248, which is a technical standard to which you qualify all of your welders and all of your procedures for naval work.
That's a lot of stuff you probably didn't know when you came as the shop
No.
helper, as the shop helper. Like even exists that those things have to be
Correct.
done. You think, well, I'm a welder. I know how the machine works. I know how to put metal down, and I know how to make the weld look
Is
good.
it a sound weld? Like that's really all I could grasp at that point was, are there any defects, and is it a sound weld? So to come from there to where I'm at now, sometimes I feel like a lawyer in like in the welding field, having to go through all of the technical documents and all of the standards and stuff and keep all our weld program in line with all of that. Some of it's up for interpretation and some of it is very hard line in the sand. So it's fun, going back and forth with certain people on the interpretive parts and being proved wrong here and there. Hey, I'm human. I make mistakes. Thanks for pointing it out. That's why we work together. Um, but that's a big part of where I'm at now in the QA department is making sure everything's done by the book and that it's done right. So I appreciate anybody who can offer some constructive criticism.
Yeah, constructive, not adversarial, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
and I think that's one of the things I really found in the industry is for the most part, it's constructive, right? We're trying to build something. We all want the same thing, which is an effective, safe, properly built product.
yes,
Um, and it's not as though there's people trying to come in to find things that are wrong in order to stop work.
correct.
Um, so a whole career field that you didn't even know when you came in. When's the first time you put down metal?
I went to a welding course in high school. So I attended a trade course in high school through Chesapeake Center for Science and Technology. I'm a big advocate for them as well as the other trade schools locally. I believe there's New Horizons in Newport News. There's a Virginia Beach one as well. I forget the name, but a very large advocate for those. I've been kind of going and talking to some of these kids for years now. I haven't done it in a couple years since being with Mills Marine, but we used to make yearly trips to visit these trade schools. But that's where I started, and that's why I'm a big advocate for them. It's a great in to not only the trade, but also to the industry. We have a lot of pipelines built in through the Workforce Council, as well as our own HR departments. They make a concerted effort to visit these places. They treat them as a valued pipeline of talent and skilled trades. So like I said before, it's very nice to go back and not only visit and kind of share my story with them, but to just encourage these guys to stick with it, guys and girls to stick with it, because it's a very valuable trade. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you have to do forever. Like it's getting your foot in the door somewhere and taking that opportunity and running with it.
And that's kind of what happened with you, right? I mean, you said you came in as a shop helper working for one company, and you were in material control
Yes.
at one point, got a chance to apply your welding skills, took this left turn. Where did that left turn go?
That was getting off the tools and getting into the QA department as the weld tech. That was where that left turn kind of happened. Again, very fortunate that it did. At the time, it didn't seem like a blessing. It seemed like, my opportunities are dwelling up. This is a stopgap, to kind of get myself out of this stale position I'm in at the moment. And I'll continue to pursue whatever opportunities are provided to me, but I don't know what those look like. I don't know what the path forward exactly is. This is a whole new side of things for me. So it was very kind of uncertain, kind of scary. I'd taken on, it was a lateral move. So it wasn't like new responsibility or like expectations necessarily that I was scared about. It was just the fact that it was foreign and that I didn't know what the path forward looked like. And upon leaving Fairlead and coming to Mills Marine, I was hired as a QA inspector because I had my VT level 2, my visual testing level 2 certificate. And upon coming onto Mills Marine, they requested that I start pursuing my level 3. At the time, we were contracting, third-party services. It is required that your weld program have a level 3 to oversee it. And they didn't want to continue to pay a third party. They wanted to pay somebody in-house to do that and invest in somebody in-house to do that. So they put all of their resources and effort into me that was required to get me there. And upon getting my level 3, I'm now our weld program manager. I'm also, our NDT lead, and I qualify all of our NDT inspectors as well as all of our welders, being the weld program manager.
So it sounds like the first place you were working had a good tech that they liked, that was doing good things for the company, and when one door closed, they found another way to keep you on because
Correct.
show up, doing the work, valuable member of the team. And that seems to be true with the vast majority of these companies out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you find somebody as an employer that you like, you find the opportunity to keep the right people on the team.
That's the hope.
That's and it doesn't always work out like that.
Yeah.
But when people that show up, do the job, willing to learn something new, that's really valuable. And then that sounds like that opened to get another door that, unfortunately for one company, but you filled a need somewhere else.
Yes.
That they didn't have in-house.
Correct. It's a good feeling knowing that, like I said, I went from a position of uncertainty, not knowing what the path forward looked like, to making a pretty significant stride in the development, the advancement of my career over the past 3 years. It feels good, and I can't take all the credit for that. I'm very fortunate, and Mills Marine has been very good to me. Um, but I do take a lot of pride in that.
What's the next step? Where do you think you go from here?
The path again is a little uncertain. Considering I've gotten to this point and I didn't even foresee myself getting to this point this quickly. Who knows? I, I would like to say that I could continue down this path in the QA department and um, continue to grow our weld program and get more familiar with the QA management side of things, actually managing the QA department as a whole. It seems as if, though, our company currently could use somebody to fill that role in the near future, and I would be more than happy to do so, as long as I'm prepared and have the experience to do so.
There's a lot of talk about trying to get more people into the trades, and for some reason, people always latch on to welding is, um, and not that it's simple, but it just seems obvious, right? If you're building ships, you think welders, they're
Hmm.
metal, you've got to do that, but the quality assurance side of that applies to far more than just the welding.
Yes.
Um, and I wonder,
There's electrical, there's your painting, which can be more involved than the welding side of things.
more than one company has struggled over quality assurance checks on paint. That's
Hmm.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Um,
That's one of the reasons like I say, I would want to have the experience and the knowledge to be able to do so before I just hop into it. Um, that being said, I do trust my abilities and I'm confident in myself to learn on the fly, which I've done in pretty much every other role that I've had to take on. um, that aside, though, I do like having the objective experience and the actual skill set going in. I don't like going in blind.
yeah. I guess you probably need to learn to paint before you can QA the paint, right?
Not necessarily. I don't think all the QAs in paint know how to paint, just like not all weld QAs know how to weld, but that is very much, I think, former welders make some of the best inspectors.
Yeah. Without hurting anybody's feelings, hopefully, I've often felt like sometimes it's not the best tradesmen that become the best leader of tradesmen.
True.
Um, I'm not a tradesman. I can work some tools reasonably well, but
Hmm.
certainly not making a living off of it. But when I came up through college, you'd heard people say that A students work for B students, and they all work for C students. Um, and as a C student guy, and now the owner of my own company, I see some truth to that.
Yeah.
But I've seen that in some of the tradesmen too, and not in a negative sense.
Yeah.
But the guys that are really the tradesmen that are really good at a particular thing, and welding's one of those examples. They get so good at that thing,
Laser focus.
you almost don't want to take them off of that.
Being the person to administer the testing, and in my experience as a welder, didn't have a whole lot of help, on the testing side. Um, Very few people are understanding of some of the pressure that comes along with it, or just don't seem to care. Um, so I try to give my welders the best opportunity to pass possible within the ethical bounds, obviously. But I want my welders to pass. I'm not gonna do anything unethical to get them there. But I work with my welders. I show them how to do it if they're unsure of how to do it. I don't want to test somebody to a process that I can't do myself.
Well, that's got to be really important now because there aren't enough welders,
Yes.
which means we got to bring people in at the entry level.
And they need help.
And you probably got some young kid that's coming in it is a test,
Yes.
right? It's literally an employment test. If you can't put the metal down the way that you need to, you don't get the job.
Yeah.
So it's got to be just like somebody sitting in class taking a math exam or an English exam,
Freaking out.
freaking out a little bit, right?
Internally just losing it. Yeah.
So I would imagine you have the opportunity as the weld test inspector to either just grade what they give you, and if they pass, they pass. If they don't, then you just show them the door. But that's not the way that we get more tradesmen into the industry.
100%. Couldn't agree more. Like I said, I try to work with them as much as possible, knowing that not everybody had the opportunity to go to tech in high school. Not everybody has a welder for a dad, and equipment in their garage to practice with. I certainly didn't. So it's important that people, give people the benefit of the doubt within reason, um,
Sure.
to work on it and hone in their craft a little bit, as well as
You
pass
hold
their
the
test.
gun just a little bit here. You just change your pace
Yes,
a little bit. I mean, sometimes that can be just enough. And if
all
somebody's
the time. I hear that all the time.
and if
Thanks, man, just for showing me, the proper angle for this. I appreciate it.
and if somebody comes in to take a test on a piece of equipment they're not necessarily familiar with,
Exactly. There's a lot of that. All these shops have different equipment. Not everything runs 100% the same. That's something I've been hearing since I got into this role of administering weld testing. You get a lot of people who come in and are like, I've never used a miller before. Like, okay, well, it's not that different. We can work with it. I'll set you up a scrap piece. We'll get it dialed in. These are the settings I like. A lot of weld tests, the people administering them, they make you do all that, and there is good reason for doing that. You want somebody to know what they're doing. You don't want to hire somebody who can just lay the bead and can't set up their own machine. But if somebody asks, what settings do you like to run? I don't see the problem in sharing that information or being helpful in that regard.
when you wake up in the morning, you know you're heading in on a Monday to start the week. What are you most looking forward to?
Most looking forward to? I would have to say it's working with the young welders and getting them to where they need to be to pass the tests. Getting guys and girls who are traditionally non-skilled labor or just helpers and they want to pursue a trade. Again, I had that background when I came on as a helper, and I had always wanted to pursue the welding trade. Those people who don't have that when they come on, that sensibility or that path, um, they eventually get the notion that that's the skill to pursue. And I am a big proponent of that. I love seeing people with little to no experience come work on their trade, get qualified, and then next thing you know, they're qualified in multiple processes, and uh, they're asking for more money. uh, I'm not in charge of the financial side, so I really it brings me some joy to see that. Actually, I'm sure some other people would say, "Hey, slow down. We need to watch how much we're doling out to everybody." But it is very very important that welders feel as if though they have opportunities. They feel as if though that they're progressing. That's both non-skilled tradespeople who want to get into it as well as established welders. That's important. I feel like to continue to progress and grow within the trade, learn new things. Um, Even 12 years in, I'm still learning new things about the trade. There are still processes that I haven't touched. I've done a lot, but haven't done it all. So
And the machinery keeps changing too.
correct. The standards to which you're welding, the acceptance criteria, and the NAVC standards themselves, they're always being revised. So not only is it important as a weld program manager to make my welders aware of these things when I'm administering workmanship training, but I have to stay on top of these things to make sure that our weld program stays in conformance at all times.
So your view of things, who are you seeing come? You talked about young people. What does that look? Right out of high school? Are they transitioners from some other field? What are you seeing come through your shop?
A little bit of both. Definitely some people straight out of high school. Very few are we bringing on as welders, especially if they don't have any actual experience or trade school experience. But we definitely get people coming from, regular day jobs who want to pursue either a trade or at least want to get into the maritime industry as a fire watch or what have you, whatever means to get their foot in the door, which again, I a big proponent of. I respect to the fullest. Come in any way you can to the industry and prove yourself. Um, and the opportunities will definitely present themselves to you. But we get people from McDonald's, and I was working at Cracker Barrel before I started as a helper. Um, Not long out of high school, it was like 6 months or so, but we definitely see a lot of young people coming straight from either high school or some sort of continued educational program, um, as well as people who've been in the trade for years or been in the industry for years who just are seeking a different opportunity. And I feel that Mills Marine has been very, very good and open with their employees as far as giving them the opportunities if they prove themselves.
What's the most fun or the thing you're most proud of that you've been part of building?
Hmm. Um, Lots of projects in my fabrication career that I take a lot of pride in. But it's hard not to like look at some of the recent work that we're doing. In the past, we've done lots of very cool projects. We did the launch and retrieval system, which was a unmanned um, boat, watercraft, and it actually had a sonar fish that they would drop into the water behind to tow and sweep for, I guess, mines or other watercraft. Very cool. It was a prototype. I did about 85% of the fabrication on it, everything but like the machining. And it was a large project. They trusted me to do most of the fabrication and welding on it pretty early in my career too. And it taught me a lot. It was all aluminum. It was very tight tolerances, um, and it was a very complicated, complex assembly that I didn't have a whole lot of experience with that scale prior to that. It was probably about as big as this room. Well, not quite, maybe about half the size, but rather large assembly, and a lot of moving parts.
In prototyping, building the first of something has got
Yes,
all sorts of challenges.
yes, constant rework, constant. Once something gets machined and it relieves some stress, now you're out of tolerance on 4 or 5 measurements, and you got to go and cut stuff out and re-weld stuff in. And yeah, prototypes are they're fun.
Working on ships, like you know the hull number, you know the name, you probably
Yes,
know some of the people,
yes,
and especially with the aircraft carriers,
yes,
you'll see them in the news the next time around.
yep,
And just kind of knowing that, hey, CVN 75, Truman, if I remember right,
yep,
like Truman had a pretty epic deployment that just wrapped up not so long ago.
yep.
Um, and it's got to feel good to say I had a piece of making sure that ship worked.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually funny. A movie that I've seen probably 10, 12 times, it didn't occur to me what ship was in that movie, and that I had actually been a part of that ship until very recently. Again, probably because most of my career was in a shop, but I was watching Transformers 2 recently, and CVN 74. CVN 74 is in Transformers 2, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. It's in port right now. I've been doing work on that. It's definitely funny because early in my career, I didn't get to see a lot of my projects either in action or uh, on the ship. 90% of the work we were doing was going on a boat, but I didn't know what it was doing. I didn't know where it was going. So it's cool to be out there now and to see firsthand where some of this stuff is going and exactly what it's doing and how integral things are to the operation of the ship. So that's probably the most exciting part of being on the ship repair side of things now and actually being in the yards. So you get to actually pinpoint where things are going and what ships you're helping operate.
Having a sense of purpose of knowing the thing that you're building, working on, is going to have a long service, like 50 years,
Yes.
um, that it's doing something important and that you're contributing something that actually matters to it. That sense of purpose, I hear that sometimes with the young generations like looking for some sense of purpose. They want it to be meaningful,
Yes.
and in this industry it really does.
Yep.
It really provides those kind of opportunities. It's not a product that's going in a box that's getting shipped somewhere that you'll never see again.
Yep.
You'll see Truman again.
Even if it's just in a movie, like you will see it again if you're not up on current news and things of that sort. Yeah, you'll catch a glimpse of something that you worked on, and it's a cool feeling. It really is. I feel like, and to kind of switch, not really switch subjects, but a lot of jobs that are currently being pursued, AI is on the rise, and I don't foresee AI taking the job of welders in the ship repair industry, not anytime soon, not our skilled trades people.
I feel like for a lot of the skilled trades, it's going to make some things easier,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
going through a reference, whatever.
yes,
Um, But at the end of the day, the work still has to be done by a human. And there
yep,
may be another machine involved, but there's always going to be a human that's wiring the thing up, putting the metal down,
yep,
assembling it. Right? Those skilled trades are still going to be critical. And there may be some level of automation or tooling that comes in that helps that, but it's never really going to replace the people. And if they are, it's only going to create other opportunities.
yeah. As far as the mobility, and moving around as much as I have in my career, it's a testament to being flexible and to having an open mind, as well as just being. I think I think the best way to put it is to be undeniable in what you do. Um, People can't objectively sit back and say that that person doesn't do a good job or they're not valuable to this company, they don't provide much. Um, so in any role really that you take on within this industry or any industry for that matter, be undeniable. Don't allow any room for doubt in what you provide and what you bring to the company, and then just have a hard work ethic. I think that's one thing that my mother instilled in me. Um, Probably the best thing she ever did, and I'm super thankful because having a strong work ethic, I think, is what kept me around and opened up a lot of these doors, as well as, like I said, having an open mind and being a good team member, being somebody that's fun to work around, doesn't provide a whole lot of issues, um, and shows up to work on time. I think that's the biggest thing. But those traits in combination is what's helped me progress the way that I have. Um, as well as some luck. There's definitely some luck involved. I would be remiss if I didn't say that.
If you had to tell somebody that doesn't have them now, what soft skills do they need to think about, to work on?
Flexibility, fluidity, being able to roll with what's thrown at you, um, and the open mind to to take on new challenges, things that you're not exactly familiar with, um, doing doing anything that's asked of you, basically. Um, I think that's very important. That's what a lot of people in this industry are looking for, even if you're not a skilled tradesperson. I think that's how I got, to a position within the welding side of things, was just proving that, hey, I'm capable of doing what's asked of me, no matter what it is, and trying to absorb everything that I can, whether it's just the trade that I'm actually pursuing or working on the paint line at nights. I was on second shift helper on paint line. So you absorb everything that you can in every aspect that you have an opportunity to lay hands on. That and just communication is a big one. Being able to properly communicate with your team and your leaders, both when things are good and when things are bad. I know that that's an area that I've had a problem with in the past. Just being fully transparent. That's one of the things that I strive towards, is just handling all situations with grace and respect, regardless of how frustrating they may be. I think that's a very big one that a lot of employers would tend to appreciate.
A lot of things that you've talked about, I think, are really where I would want this podcast and these kind of discussions, the kind of engagements that you've had. Like, we obviously want to attract new tradesmen here, but I feel like so much of this needs to go to the people that have influence. Like, when you came up through Chesapeake Public Schools, they've done a good job at maintaining that skilled trades training program there.
Yes.
A lot of places have kind of let those things atrophy over the years and have to build them back.
Mm-hmm.
So now, talking to parents, talking to teachers and guidance counselors and other people who who talk to young people about what a career is out there, they need to hear that there are these other opportunities,
Yes.
and where you start isn't where you go.
Yes.
And just because you start on your tools doesn't mean that's where you spend the next 40 years.
Correct. I obviously did not know that when I graduated high school. I thought I have this skill. They make good money in the area. I'll go straight from high school into a high-paying job, and I'll just stack money for the next 30 years. But it's a young person's mindset. I don't have the full picture, and it's crazy how much your perspective changes just over the course of a couple years being in the industry.
How long have you been in this industry?
Not that long in comparison to others, but 12 years now. Yeah.
12 years. So you're like 30,
31. Yeah.
31.
Yeah.
And to be a quality assurance lead, if I properly characterize what you're doing,
I'm our Weld program manager and our level 3 NDT.
that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
At 31 years old, you're working in a position that somebody could go to college for several years, for at least a 4-year degree, get some work experience. You're about on par with where somebody who took that path to get there, and doing it
Yes.
without the debt, because you've been working for the past 12 years.
Another thing I'm very uh, adamant about is not everybody needs to go to school. I was a very good student. I was like in the top 20 of my class, but I didn't have money, didn't want to pursue a bunch of grants or loans for that matter, and possibly go into debt to pursue an education when I knew that there was a skill that I was more than happy to pursue. There's definitely a lot of people who think that school is the only option, when they graduate high school, go to college, get a degree, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with pursuing a skill either. And I'm thankful that I'm not just now getting into this role and having to pay off a bunch of student debt. It is possible to get to a role such as mine or equivalent without that, and that's something I'm very proud of, and I'd like to see more of. So
Yeah, I think the value out of this conversation is people getting to hear somebody who's come up through that path, and again, for the people who aren't sure and the people that are talking to kids about the opportunities, they need to hear that these kind of opportunities, that they're real.
yeah.
um, and not just at one company, but every company out there that is in this line of work needs people in these roles. um, and it's constant. The need's constant. It's not going away.
Yes.
It's only growing.
You're right. Every company, when they see somebody worthwhile, they see somebody that's putting in the effort, the ethic, has the correct mindset, most of the time they're gonna invest in that person and provide them with opportunities.
Tyler, thanks for sitting down with us today. Thanks for telling us your story, and this is gonna resonate with a lot of people out there. And thanks for coming in and telling
Thank
us.
you for having me. It's been an honor. Appreciate it.